Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you, even though I can't see you. The slight change I was going to do for the third part of my trilogy, The Hero in Us All. I've decided instead to do We Are All Grail Knights, which I thought was more appropriate. So I use as one of my pen names Gawain, because I identify with Sir Gawain, who was the Knight of the Goddess, according to John Matthews. So, on this rather frosty day, but the sun's shining at least, so I hope you enjoy what's happening, what's going to come. So first we'll have a little meditation. I'll just give this quote from the Master KH, one of the Theosophical Masters. It is upon the serene and placid surface of the unruffled mind that the visions gathered from the invisible find a representation in the visible world. Otherwise you would vainly seek those visions, those flashes of sudden light, which have already helped to solve so many of the minor problems and which alone can bring the truth before the eye of the soul. It is with jealous care that we have to guard our mind plane from all the adverse influences which daily arise in our passage through earth life. Amazing. So I have this visualization of sitting by a still lake, gazing into the waters at a reflection of the moon. If the waters were ruffled by the winds of our passions and desires and thoughts, the image would shatter into countless images as the one becomes the many through desire, and the delusions and illusions as a result of this. But we sit in perfect tranquility, watching the breath rise and fall rhythmically, tuning the breath and mind. Calm, tranquil breathing, calm, tranquil mind. Calm, tranquil mind, calm, tranquil breathing. So let us just remain in this tranquil state until I ring my bell, or the bell. First I light the candle of harmony. This represents the light within the hearts of each one of us. Just feel this light in the heart, this beautiful spiritual light in the heart. As I often say, it's better to light a candle than curse the darkness. And also the Bhagavad Gita says that the mind should become like a candle flame in a spot free from wind. So, let's get going. Let's get going. I hope you're all okay. So there has been a trend over the last 20 years or so to demystify the stories of King Arthur and to try to show that he was really just a minor warlord of no real importance. This is a sure sign of the materialization of the age, when we have lost our imagination and need to fit everything into the money-making, spiritually barren ideals of modern society. The fantasy film The Never-Ending Story expressed this very well, with its plot about a nothingness engulfing the world of the imagination due to people being unable to visualize anything beautiful and archetypal. The fatal seeing is believing philosophy holds precedence in the world,
but most of what is good, true and beautiful cannot be seen and never will be. Many writers, including John Matthews, have expressed the idea that King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, along with all the characters, both male and female, were and are archetypes that we all can identify with, and that the Holy Grail is symbolic of a state of consciousness that we all seek in our own way, broadly fitting these archetypes. Now, it is also suggested that the Knights of the Round Table made up a mystic brotherhood, and Merlin was their guru, that they went through many trials and initiations, some succeeding and some failing, and these are included in the many tales. There are also parallels in the stories of other countries, India, China, Japan, South America, Australia, and just about every other country in the world have their Grail stories, or their equivalent of the Grail stories. Only recently I've been rewatching an old Japanese TV series, Monkey, which is the story of a quest to bring the Buddhist scriptures from India to China with a motive to end suffering. The main characters are a Buddhist priest named Tripitaka, a pig creature representing the lustful and gluttonous elements of our nature, a sea monster, which relates to other negative elements in our being, and Monkey, who is the mind, who can be said to be the mind, restless and chaotic at all times, but striving to be still. Also, he has many powers, showing us, as H.P. Blavatsky says in the Inner Group teachings, that there are enormous mysteries connected to the lower manas being the lower mind, lower aspects of our mind. She says it is possible for it to act differently in like conditions, for it has reason and self-conscious knowledge of right and wrong, and good and evil, given to it. It is in fact endowed with all the attributes of the divine soul. In this ray is the higher manas, which is the higher aspect of the mind, the speck of responsibility on the earth. It is significant, though, that although Monkey seems to be irresponsible and silly in the story, he is the one that protects his companions in difficult times. He sees through the maya, or the illusion, that certain demons project, and guides them through difficult terrains and situations. Again, highly symbolic, as they search for the spiritual teachings, the Holy Grail. So one can read countless similar tales in the mythology of the world, all describing the search that goes on in our very hearts. For as Bhavani Shankar says in his book, The Doctrine of the Bhagavad Gita, talking about the enlightenment of humanity as a goal, for this purpose, one need not scour the lokas, that's plane of being, for from his own heart also flows a current of living, moral and spiritual energy for the good of the three worlds, more potent and dynamic in its purifying and elevating effect than any number of lectures or orations, whether on the physical or astral or some higher planes. So the search is an inner one, but these tales have a definite effect on our consciousness. So I have always been fascinated by the tales of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, more than anything else, I suppose, in certain aspects of my life. The imagery, idea and characters are wonderful to me. In a world where we are bombarded with so many negative images, it is brilliant to be able to sink our minds into the beauty of a world that is filled with magic, mystery and love, and where justice often rules in the end. The characters and landscapes are also very evocative and relate to definite areas of our consciousness. It is also, like the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana and many other tales, the age-old story of the battle between so-called good and evil, between selfish and unselfish influences and impulses in each one of us. The characters are very real to me and certainly convey something to the inner man or woman. So we have familiar characters like Sir Lancelot, who was a true and good knight, and yet he could not achieve the Grail due to his adulterous love for Arthur's wife Guinevere, karma at work. We have the characters inserted into the story by the Christians. Galahad was one. He was the son of Lancelot and Elaine, the Grail princess. He was so pure that he resisted all temptations with ease and became the only knight to attain full realization of the goal.
We have Gawain, originally the knight of the goddess, but out of favour with the patriarchal Christians, and Arthur himself, who was a true divine king, at one with the land, which ailed when he did, as the two were one. Also Parsifal, the pure fool, who through innocence and many trials became the Grail keeper, which office is connected to the mysterious figure of Prester John. Alice Leighton Cleaver and Basil Crump, in their book on Wagner's opera Lohengrin and Parsifal, refer to that mysterious personage, Prester John, who is so intimately connected with the legend of the Holy Grail. About him very little appears to have been definitely known, save the exalted nature of his office and his great wisdom and purity of character. So they connect the Grail with the East and say that the Grail came originally from the East and it was brought from its mountain fastnesses in India, probably the Himalayas, and placed in the sanctuary at Mont Selavat in the Pyrenees in order to spread its light and wisdom in Western lands. When the mission was concluded, the Brotherhood returned once more to the East with the sacred vessel. It would seem that Cleaver and Crump are suggesting that the Grail is something tangible rather than just symbolic, or perhaps they are using the symbol of the Grail to suggest the spread of spirituality to the West from the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas who dwell in the Himalayas. So let's look at the Grail and its various manifestations. It is a very colourful world, and into this enters the Grail, transformed from a mystical cauldron in pagan mythology to the cup that held the blood of Christ in the Christianised version of the tale. Says Derek Bryce in his book The Mystical Way and the Arthurian Quest, symbolically the Grail, the vessel which in the Christian legend contained the blood of Christ, represents the human heart in the spiritual sense, seen as a spiritual receptacle. Seeing the outside of the Grail corresponds therefore with the reaching the primordial state of true man, accomplishing the lesser mysteries of classical antiquity. Seeing the inside of the Grail represents the greater mysteries, experiencing the superior states represented by the heavens, and onwards towards divine union. Of this ultimate state, the old Chinese sages said, words cannot describe it. That is why the Grail, especially the pre-Christian Grail, is represented like a talisman, having wonderful and magical properties, for there is no other way of describing the superior spiritual states than by analogies which suit the mentality of the listener or the reader, so we can understand on different levels, as with everything. I think all the scriptures of the world can be understood on 7 different levels, from the lowest, just the dead letter, intellectual level, up to the highest spiritual level. So to return briefly to Alice Leighton Cleaver and Basil Crump, they say that if the great lesson of Parsifal be sympathy, it is by that power and not by any intellectual process that we shall grasp its true meaning. So there are many angles to approach a study of the Grail. As I researched for this talk, I found myself in a labyrinth of words and images, and decided that for this talk, an exploration of the Grail itself and its meaning for us in this modern world will be the most useful. I could have gone along a lot of variety of exciting pathways, but a 45-minute talk would have not covered a tenth of one of them. Now H.P. Blavatsky, in an article Psychic and Noetic Action, writes, verily, that body so desecrated by materialism and man himself is the temple of the Holy Grail, the adytum of the grandest, nay of all the mysteries of nature, in our solar nature. To go into this again, another talk entirely, but it helps to focus that the Holy Grail is something within us. Arthur Cotterill's book on Celtic mythology tells us of these ancient cauldrons that possessed mystical powers. He says that some cauldrons, such as Dagda's, combine the magical properties of both plenty and rebirth.
Similar mystery bowls or cups feature in Greek or Eastern myths as holy vessels of spiritual insight. Ultimately, the early Celtic cauldrons find expression in the Arthurian Grail, which overflows with spiritual sustenance and leads the hero from death to immortality. So the seeker finds whatever he or she needs in the Grail to proceed on the path. And this reinforces the teachings in the Secret Doctrine by H.P. Blavatsky that we proceed by self-induced and self-devised methods or efforts. The way is different for everyone, and problems start when someone, usually out of a misguided enthusiasm, tries to force their opinions upon others. This is as likely to happen anywhere in spiritual traditions. As there are many people who are unable to rise above the intellectual teachings or mistakenly believe that to adhere to them means, or clinging to them blindly, means that they're making spiritual progress. H.P. Blavatsky and the Masters were constantly telling us that most, if not all, of their teachings were incommunicable in words, and we could only really understand when we reached a certain stage of evolution. In a way, that is another Holy Grail, to live the life requisite to reach this understanding. We are all Grail Knights, trying in our own way to overcome all the obstacles to gaining that understanding through direct experience. As Galahad is said to be the only one who could partake of the full realisation of the Grail through his purity of purpose and motive. So we need a purified intellect to truly comprehend theosophical and spiritual teachings. When I say theosophical teachings, theosophy means divine wisdom. So anyone who's striving for divine wisdom is studying theosophy. It doesn't particularly mean the Theosophical Society. H.P. Blavatsky said that Gnana Yoga was the true way for the West. It is widely known in yogic teaching that the yoga of knowledge has nothing to do with book learning, but refers to spiritual knowledge. Still, our intellectual studies are certainly stages on the journey to reach our Grail, and the motive is important: to be selfless, to be loving, to be selfless. John Matthews, in his book The Arthurian Tradition, says, "Within the Grail is seen to reside healing for all the ills of creation. With its finding, or with the experience that comes to those who discover its innermost secrets, comes a release of energy, of selfless love and service, which could change the world for all time. Perhaps even bring about the end of time, the rolling up of the great cosmic chart upon which the history of humanity is written." So compare this with a few sentences from Bhavani Shankar in his doctrine of the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever any particular individual reaches the highest state of spiritual culture, develops within himself or herself all the virtues that alone entitle him to a union with Ishvara, the highest consciousness in the manifested universe, that is, and finally unites his soul with Ishvara, there is, as it is were, a sort of reaction emanating from Ishvara for the good of humanity. And in particular cases, an impulse is generated in Ishvara to incarnate for the good of humanity. This is the highest consummation of human aspiration and endeavour. So there is a legend that Arthur is not dead, but only sleeping, and will return when he is needed. Surely echoes of this same teaching. It is sad nowadays that Camelot had been reduced to a theme park, and that the main characters in the stories are used as the names for the machines that select the lottery balls. Is nothing sacred? Also, the FA Cup or any sporting trophy is referred to as the Holy Grail, as are most goals that people set themselves. People say, "Oh, my Holy Grail is to become the manager of this particular business," but of course that's just putting down the inner esoteric meaning of the Holy Grail. In Taoism, there's a difference between the Tao with a capital T and with a small t. The small t means the way in a lesser light, such as the Tao of flower arranging or painting, where Tao with a big T is reserved for the highest, most spiritual concept that we can discover or conceive of. Perhaps the same should be applied to the Grail to preserve its sacred character from desecration. Anyway, let's move on. Now, John Matthews suggests that we modern questers study the successes and failures of the Grail Knights in the stories, as they are really the stories of every man and woman to achieve some kind of spiritual enlightenment. He says that of these seekers that they set forth knowing nothing of the perils that awaited them, and even as word of successive failures reached their ears, they continued their search, unabated, establishing new paths, setting out fresh waymarkers for those who would follow. Fantastic, isn't that life? Later, he adds, it is not required that those who follow the Grail today adhere to any specific creed or cult, only that they seek the general good, the healing of the barren lands. The barren lands are the materialistic areas of thought that we're in at the moment. Materialism. It's very important now with what's going on at the moment. Heal the barren lands. The barren lands. And also, it binds together all who are of its family and its fellowship, which is a gateway between worlds and a bridge to the divine. So we all come together, you see. You meet people, and you're not meeting for the first time, especially if you form an instant bond with that person. As I've said in many times, that you can know somebody all your life and never feel that close to them. You can meet somebody in a cafe or on a course or a trip for a few days and feel that you've formed a bond, that you've known them forever. This is because you're coming together from past lives. It doesn't particularly mean that you have to be with somebody a long time, even a few minutes. If that bond is from a past life, you can reconnect and you become soul friends, you can become soul companions. You know, soul brothers, soul sisters, forever. And you'll probably meet in your next life and be a lot closer. Who knows, who knows. It's all very theosophical and spiritual stuff. Although I'm trying to avoid using too many quotes, I'm failing miserably, as I love using quotes. If I feel that someone says something better than me, I'll use the quote. There's appropriate ones keep popping into my head, and this one is from The Voice of the Silence by H.P. Blavatsky, and reinforces the last one from John Matthews. The fearless warrior, his life blood oozing from his wide and gaping wounds, will still attack the foe, drive him from out his stronghold, vanquish him ere he himself expires. Act then, all ye who fail and suffer, act like him, and from the stronghold of your soul chase all your foes, out away ambition, anger, hatred, e'en to the shadow of desire, when even you have failed. Remember thou that fightest for man's liberation, each failure is a success, and each sincere attempt wins its reward in time. Beautiful. Because we're all spiritual warriors. You know, we use the power of love, compassion as weapons. The sword of true spiritual knowledge. And from The Light on the Path by Mabel Collins, or translated by Mabel Collins, stand aside in the coming battle, and though thou fightest, be thou not the warrior. Look for the warrior and let him fight in thee. Take his orders for battle and obey them. Obey him not as though he were a general, but as though he were thyself, and his spoken words were the utterance of thy secret desires. For he is thyself, yet infinitely wiser and stronger than thyself. He is thyself, yet thou art but finite and liable to error. He is eternal and sure, he is eternal truth. And once he has entered thee and become thy warrior, he will never utterly desert thee, and at the day of the great peace, he will become one with thee. When you reach that high spiritual state, the day of great peace. So this is allowing the higher self to be the guide. This is practically what the quest is about. The knight or warrior is the quester.
we need to step aside and let our inner self do the work. It is a wonderful realisation, this, that we have that part of us that cannot put a foot wrong, if we but trust in it. But most of us can't. We try to put our faith in words and other people, intermediaries, but words can always be misunderstood. Hitler got his ideas about the Aryan race from the secret doctrine, so we hear. Even if words are faithfully reproduced from the original, there are minds who will twist and pervert them to their own ends. Words and images are dangerous always. Only direct experience as a result of living the life counts for anything in the final analysis. And this is the great message of the Voice of the Silence, which talks of the three wholes: the physical world, the astral world, and the spiritual. It is only when one reaches the spiritual level that one can be said to be safe. So no sooner have we resolved to find out who we are, the true man or true woman, we have set off from the safe precincts of our castle, Camelot, and we take strange landscapes and unusual experiences. But if we remain focused upon our goal, nothing can deter us, and the warrior within will lead us through the worst trials, and these will come, it is sure. We have to face our dwellers on the threshold, which will be different for everyone. We'll have to come face to face with the worst elements of our nature, maybe, which our quest may bring to the surface. We'll meet and slay our dragons in time, and perchance out of time. Theosophy teaches that determined efforts to realise our spiritual nature may bring out the darker elements of our being, which have to be faced and overcome. And there are many trials and tribulations that the Knights of the Round Table encountered on their journey. Parsifal, when he saw the wounded king at the Grail Castle, was supposed to ask, "What ails thee?" But he was simply overcome by the whole scenario and said nothing. Because of this, he had to go back out into the world to gain more experience and develop compassion. For it is compassion that really heals the world. And it's something we have to develop within ourselves, become compassionate and loving and caring. So, the fact that one of the qualities of the Grail, as we've seen, is that it heals ills on every level, is symbolic of the development of this quality of compassion, or the awakening to this quality, which is at the centre of all things. We also equated the Grail with the heart, which is generally regarded as the seat of compassion and spirituality. The Voice of the Silence again says, "Compassion is no attribute, it is the law of laws, eternal harmony, Eliah's self, Eliah the universal soul, a shoreless universal essence, the light of everlasting right, and the fitness of all things, the law of love eternal, the law of love eternal. The more thou dost become at one with it, thy being melted into its being, the more thy soul unites with that which is, the more thou wilt become compassion absolute." Also, talking about the word karma, that was my phone going. Also talking about the word karma in the Theosophical glossary, she says it was the first conscious, all-embracing desire for universal good, love, and for all that lives and feels needs help and kindness. The first feeling of infinite tender compassion and mercy that arose in the consciousness of the creative one force, as soon as it came into life and being as a ray from the Absolute. So compassion is essential to us in our quest, as well as the spirit of courage and endurance. There's a saying again in the Voice of the Silence, which is one of my favourites: "Have patience as one who doth for evermore endure." Have patience as for one who doth for evermore endure. So in the film Gawain and the Green Knights, which I actually lost because I've got so many DVDs, I put it inside the wrong cover and lost it for about a year, but I found it again recently and I rewatched it. It was a TV film. It was very, very good. It stuck to more or less to the original story, which actually will make a nice talk, actually, Gawain and the Green Knight. I may do that. So Gawain has a shield with a symbol of a pentagram inscribed on it, That was Gawain's symbol, the pentagram. This is his mandala. When things get really difficult, he looks at the symbol and remembers what each point represents. In the film, he repeats these things many times when he looks at his shield with the pentagram. And they are loving kindness, compassion, courtesy, integrity, and openness. Rather beautiful. Loving kindness, compassion, courtesy, integrity, and openness. Oh, there they are. Oh, there it is. So let's think about our own individual journey. I call the talk "We Are All Grail Knights" because the word knight is, of course, asexual, so it can refer to men or women. As we've seen in our previous meditations, that the warrior spirit is all important for the aspirant. But this is not a belligerent state of mind, but a steady focusing on the highest goal that we can individually conceive of, and the determination to achieve that goal despite the efforts of life to throw us off course. That is why anyone with a soul thrills at the adventures of the Knights of the Round Table, or the exploits of heroes like Rama, Krishna, Perseus, Odysseus, and those connected to the mythologies of every nation, because they are the story of every man and every woman. Yes. Symbolic of our own internal and external battles to realise our true selves, to find out who we are amidst the world's din, to find that Holy Grail in our very hearts, and to learn to spread its glory throughout the world. It is the effort to find the peace that passeth all understanding, and to remain centred in that peace. Once we can do that, nothing can shake us, and we have the calmness and tranquility to see and to understand what endures and what passes in this world of relative truths that we live in. We can then meditate and choose what is important, what is essential. We can see that we spend money on mere baubles in the busy marketplace of the world, and what is real, the Holy Grail, is free and the birthright of every living being, every living thing, and something that we as human beings, in the true sense of the words, can access at any time, if we only can learn to see what are the true values of life: compassion, loving kindness, openness, integrity, and courtesy, as I said when talking about Gawain's shield. These will get us through if we equate integrity with purity and openness with innocence. We have to become as little children if we are to enter the kingdom of heaven. But at the same time, the kingdom of heaven must be taken by force. If by force we just mean perseverance. The masters have said that we need burning sincerity, and that this is vastly superior to numbers. Burning sincerity. I know a lot of the Japanese, like the Shinto, one of the basic things is sincerity. To be sincere. That gets you through a lot of things. Be sincere in what you're doing. Be sincere. So, sincerity is vastly superior to numbers. What wonders can be worked with sincerity and strength of mind, coupled with moral courage and an unselfish motive. This is the basis of the spiritual path, and it is this path that we must follow when we emerge from the castle of our words and concepts and take the road that leads to the castle of the Holy Grail. Life is a time of adventure, but all the adventures are not necessarily good ones. There's a lot of pain amidst the bright sparkles, indeed if there are any of them. For some people there's not even that consolation, and we're lucky we can find those sparkles and those beautiful times in our lives, which a lot of us, the most spiritually minded people, can by going within. If we look back upon our life, we can see the many twists and turns in the road, mistakes that we made, or apparent mistakes, and wrong choices. But if we look deeper, we see that all these are leading us towards, onwards, and ever deeper towards our Holy Grail, towards the love that sustains us. Everything perhaps has a purpose. So Alice Leighton Cleaver and Basil Crump describing the closing moments of the opera Parsifal writes, "A ray of light descends upon the cup, which glows with an intense lustre, and as Parsifal elevates it, the white dove of the Grail, emblem of the divine spirit, floats down from the dome and hovers over its messenger. Kundry, who was the witch in the story, with eyes ever fixed on her Redeemer, falls lifeless at his feet. Desire is dead, and the low deceptive illusory powers of nature are dispelled by the light of truth. No grander figure was ever depicted than that of Parsifal as he stands the embodiment of compassionate love before the adoring brotherhood, the living link between them and the fount of divine love, whose light and power now radiate upon them from the cup he holds aloft." Well, this is emblematic of what we will experience when we learn to see beyond the clouds of life, to the sun that shines behind all, when we see beyond illusion to who we truly are, when our masks or personalities are removed, and we stand in our true nakedness before the shrine of the Holy Grail. That dimension to our being that shines perpetually despite the apparent dark moments of our lives. Once we become somewhat aware of this radiance and the fact that all of life is poetry, not dull routine, unless we need it to be so, then we will begin to see ourselves in a truer light and wonder why we ever denied the spirit within, why we ever thought of ourselves as less than human, why we ever turned our hearts away from the beauty of another soul or the wonders that lie around us and within us from day to day. We'll see each day as a new incarnation, a new beginning, a fresh chance to try to understand the mystery of life that unfolds before the inquiring mind of the aspirant, whose compass always points towards the oneness of all things, the universal brother and sisterhood of humanity, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste or colour. We go through this life, each in their own world, no one ever really knowing how we feel deep within our heart of hearts. No one knows how we feel, only we do. And sometimes maybe even we don't doubt it, don't know it. Occasionally someone may come along who resonates with us to a greater or lesser degree, and we call this love. On a larger scale, someone may resonate with the greater heart of humanity to a greater or lesser degree and become a saint, a holy man or a saviour of mankind in some way. But in most ways we live and die alone as personalities, striving always to become nearer to those around us, trying to understand and be understood for who and what we really are. In this talk we have looked at the Grail as a spiritual heart, which despite our diverse roots is the same in each one of us. We are indeed Grail Knights, taking our own pathways to the Grail Castle, encountering our own dragons, rescuing our own maidens or knights, resisting temptation, falling victim to it more than often than not, learning to be compassionate, to love, to ask the right questions to those we meet, learning to find the answers within ourselves, and most importantly, to realise comradeship on our journey, to know that others are going through similar experiences, the same heartache, the same heartbreak, the same joy, the same sadness, the same loneliness, the same ecstasy on finding truths that sustain. Brothers and sisters, let us continue our journey until we meet at the castle of the Holy Grail someday. May the Masters of Mercy speed that day on. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. And let's have a moment of quiet. And I'll ring my bell again. won't blow out the candle of harmony, I'll leave it burning, because think of that symbol of the light shining in the heart. Well, thanks for listening, and I hope to be with you soon again. I've got one or two other things coming up, one or two other projects coming up. I've got a short talk, I think, coming, and some of my poetry. Look at my poetry channel and the magical worlds of Anodus, and the Bolton Lodge of the Theosophical Society page, which I have, and all the other theosophical pages that are going on at the moment. And yes, thank you. Hope to see you soon. I will see you soon.